Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to go through a brand new palette in my collection. Most of the palettes that I get are secondhand. I usually buy them off a secondhand app, but once in a while I do buy a new palette. And this year I had my eye on one, and when I saw the company having a sale, I picked it up and grabbed it. This is the Alice in Wonderland palette, and today I'm going to be unboxing it and just doing a little, I've already used it once, so I guess a second impression with you guys. I also want to chat a little bit more about the idea of holiday sales, how quickly they've arrived and how early they started. I did touch on this briefly in a previous video, which I can card above for you, and I had a few more thoughts on it, and you guys seem to really enjoy the conversation in the comments, so that's what we're going to do today. If you've never been here before, hello, my name is Rachel. I'm a homeschooling stay-at-home mom. I love color, I love eyeshadow, I love to combine the two, and I upload lots of videos every week, all eyeshadow related content. So if you like what you see and you would like to see more, I hope you'll consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell before you leave, and now let's get going. Alright, so here is the Alice in Wonderland palette from Sigma. Now, I got this when they were having, I think it was 50% off, $50 or more, and the palette itself, I'll put above the original price. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's over $50. So at 50% off, I think I paid around $30, something like that. I thought it was a good deal based on the fact that Sigma is very highly reviewed. People love Sigma's formula. I'd never tried it before because none of their color stories ever really caught my eye until the Cinderella palette came out. And I'm not a Disney princess girl. I mean, I like the princesses, but I'm not like full on Disney. But I thought the Cinderella palette was their most interesting color story up to that date. And I had my eye on it, but it was kind of a back in my mind. There were other palettes that I liked much more. But then they came out with the Alice in Wonderland palette, and that one really caught my eye because that was a color story that I was interested in. So I decided to buy it when I saw it on sale. It was a birthday gift. I think I bought it on my birthday. I just want to open it up and show it to you and then do an eye look with it. I have to say, I hate this packaging. I hate the 1960s, 70s psychedelic packaging. I get it. And I understand that, you know, given the reputation that Lewis Carroll had, how they might have used psychedelic packaging. I understand. I just personally hate it, so I'm not going to keep that outer box. And honestly, it kind of gives me a headache. It's a little bit of a kind of thing. But anyway, this is the palette, matches the outer box, and the back of the palette, it's a little bit embossed, and it's got each of the shadows with their names. And then the inside has a brush, and the brush is dual-ended. Now, another reason I was willing to pay more for a palette, because I usually buy them secondhand, was because I'd heard Sigma brushes are awesome, and I knew that a brand new palette would come with two Sigma brushes, so that's pretty cool. And then the inside has the Alice in Wonderland sleeve, which I think I'm holding, nope, thought I was holding it upside down. It has a sleeve that matches. I'm not keeping that either. But the inside of the palette, the color story, which is why we buy eyeshadow, is very nice. I do really like this color story. I definitely think it's their most interesting by far. I love how they've got some warm tones, some cool tones. They've got some interesting shimmers. This is actually a very good companion for the Cinderella palette. A friend of mine found a picture online, and I can put it here for you so you can see, of somebody comparing the two palettes next to each other. So they're not the same. Some of the more neutral tones are similar, but they're good, like sister palettes. And I've still kind of been on the fence about whether or not I want to get Cinderella as a sister palette for this. So I am going to try this palette for a second time and then kind of give my final thoughts on it. I wasn't able to film the look the first time I used it. The video was a mess, but I did use it once before, and I have some thoughts, but I want to do this eye look and then see how I can formulate those thoughts a little bit more concisely before giving them to you at the end. These brushes are the E38 diffuser crease brush and E54 medium sweeper, which is more pinched and flat. So I'm going to start with the E38, which makes me sound very much like a pro YouTuber saying, I'm going to take my Sigma E38 and I'm going to go into the shade Mad Hatter. So I'm taking Mad Hatter and putting it in the outer corner in the crease. I think I'll deepen it from here. I'm really not entirely sure. I don't have a plan for today's look, but we'll figure it out. I wanted to talk to you guys more about the holiday sales. When I made that video, I got a lot of comments on it about your thoughts and how you'd noticed that they were cropping up earlier in the year and why you thought that might be the case. After I posted the video, I had talked to my husband about the same topic, and he gave me another perspective, which was very interesting to me. So I thought that given the fact that people were engaging in the comments, apparently it was something interesting to you guys, I would make another video and just talk about his thoughts on that issue. There's not a lighter shade in this palette that I could use to blend out this medium toned mint that I've used, so I've cleaned off my brush with a color switch, and I'm just going to buff at the edges, get the shape that I want, and this will become my transition color. In my video when I talked about sales the first time, I had a few speculative ideas. I thought that perhaps the sales were kicking in earlier because brands wanted to clear out inventory to make room for new stuff, which is, kind of the idea behind Black Friday anyway, at least partially. I thought perhaps consumers had expressed or made it quite clear that they wanted to shop earlier and, get all their holiday shopping done a little bit sooner so they don't have to worry about it later. And another thought that I had was, well, perhaps people are a bit more financially strained this year, and so starting their shopping earlier would help them to spread out the shopping over a longer period of time, over more paychecks, so they can still get what they wanted to get for people, but not have it all happen in one condensed time frame. Those were my thoughts as far as why there might be such early and such large holiday sales, because some brands were doing 60-70% off. With the other side of the brush, I'm going into the shade Caterpillar. This shade absolutely captured my heart when I saw other people using it. It's just a beautiful teal shadow. So when I talked to my husband about the topic, he gave me an interesting perspective. He was talking about how the government stimulus checks that were issued earlier in this year, and I guess late last year too, I don't remember when they started coming out. Whatever you may feel about that, or the government, or the politics behind it, or what it may have done to our economy, the fact remains that the government was giving people money for a while. So now you have people with more money than usual, and the natural tendency is to go out and buy things. So they start going out and buying stuff, and therefore, companies need to make more product to meet the demand. Now let's play with some of these shimmers. I've got a flat brush, and I think I'm going to take the shade White Rabbit and put this on my inner corner, the inner lid area. My natural instinct would be to grab the sagey green and yellow shade called Tea Party, but that would make my look pretty monochromatic. It would be nice, but I don't want to be monochromatic. I want to have some contrast. So I'm dipping into White Rabbit, and then I will spray my brush. So now we've got demand for product because people have more money. Therefore, companies need to make more product, and they need to hire more employees. They needed to amp up production. A lot of companies grew pretty quickly, which can be a blessing, can also be a curse. Believe me, I've seen plenty of companies struggle or go under when they start to grow too quickly. So now the problem is that the government has ceased issuing stimulus checks, probably to curb inflation. You've got people who before had a nice little boost to their income, now that has dropped back down to whatever they were making before, and possibly less because of inflation. People are recognizing that things are starting to cost more. Groceries, gas, essentials for life are costing more because of inflation. So now without the government checks, they have the same amount that they had before, but they have less left over because ordinary, regular, everyday bills are costing more. This is a pretty silvery shade. I'm now going to flip over my brush. You can see the very center of my lid doesn't have any shadow on it. So I did the outer mattes and then I did the inner shimmer, but the middle hasn't gotten any attention. So I want to dip into the shade Alice. I flip over my brush or color switch it. Should probably color switch it. Grab the shade Alice, which is a blue shimmer, and I will spray this one as well. Now that people are back to having reduced budgets, they're finding that they aren't able to spend as much, especially on things like cosmetics, because we don't actually need cosmetics. We need to feed our children. We need to put gas in our car so we can go to work, but we don't need eyeshadow. And the brands have huge amounts of inventory left over from earlier in the year when they had ramped up stock to meet all of the demand. Well, now they've got the stock and people are slowing down with their purchases. So the brands have a bit of a problem. Not only do they have tons of leftovers in their warehouse, they also are not getting as many sales to not only liquidate those leftovers, but to make work for their employees. So now I think you're going to start seeing layoffs, because without people purchasing, they don't need all their workers. And now the brands need to liquidate their inventory to make room for new, but also to try to recoup some of the money that they put out making the inventory. I've got a really small pinched blending brush, and I'm going to go into in the inner corner with the shade White Rabbit. It's my inner corner highlight. I'm also dragging it down onto the lower lash line over to meet the mattes that I laid down before. So as my husband described this to me, I was thinking, yeah, that makes tons of sense. I hadn't really considered how the government stimulus checks had influenced our economy. Obviously, people get more money, they have security, they feel safe, they're going to go spend money, and companies have to react to that. But now we're at the tail end of that, where people don't have the extra money and companies now have too much inventory. So you start seeing sales earlier in the year because brands need to take advantage of the income that people have now, which they might not have later in the year. And they need to get rid of stuff, and they need to make work for their employees. And it all kind of just ties together. And I didn't think about that side of things. I was thinking more microeconomics, like a personal family's financial situation. But I think that his explanation actually makes even more sense and is probably a bit more aligned with the majority of our society, because I know a lot of people don't budget. A lot of people don't have a good handle on their finances. They might not have long-term goals, like I want to buy a house, so I'm not going to spend money now. And you can look up socioeconomics and stuff and see how various generations deal with money. But I was looking at things on a much smaller scale. Familially, this is what people might be doing. And he was looking at things on a broader, more economic, societal scale. This is what the general public is probably thinking. Got money, spend money. No longer have money, stop spending money. Okay, so this is pretty much how the look is going to end up. I wish that there were a little bit more of a pop, a little bit more brightness. It's not bad. It's pretty. I do like it. I think I'm going to take my finger and dip into the shade Tea Party, which is the sagey green matte, just a little. I want to see how it performs with my finger. And what I want to do is I want to bring a bit more color, a bit more contrast, and a bit more brightness into the very apex of my eye. So I'm going to take it on my finger, see how it performs. I don't know how it performs with my finger. And put it right here. Just on that line, kind of on top of the Alice shade, to see if I can make it a smidge more interesting without going muddy. Yeah, I'm not really sure if that did anything. I think with a brand that had slightly more impactful shimmers, that would have made a big difference. You know what? I'll be back in a second. I've grabbed the Michaela palette from Glamlight. This is their original one. And I'm going to dip into the shade Stunnin' with my finger. Like this. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but with this shade right here. There we go. Do you see the difference? I'm even putting this on top of multiple shadows from the Sigma palette. I hope you guys can see that. I see a huge difference. Huge difference. Okay, that is better. Yes, that's better. Okay. I'm going to choose a waterline color and go off camera and catch up the other side. I'll be right back to finish out this video. Okay, here's everything, guys. To finish out the look, I did a white eyeliner in the waterline. On my lips, I'm wearing the shade Peaches and Cream from NYX Butter Gloss. I have a little bit of Milani peach colored blush on my cheeks. It's called 901 in the shade Luminoso. I put on the Tulum bronzer palette from BH Cosmetics and the Frose highlighter palette, also from BH Cosmetics, and then some mascara, and I did a winged eyeliner. All right, anyway, all of that will be linked down below in the description box. If you're interested, I include links as to where you can buy the products if they have not been discontinued. The last thing I wanted to mention was, because of all this overstock inventory that the companies need to get rid of, I think that's why we're seeing specific discounts on specific older items, things that were released earlier in the year or even maybe later last year that they still have inventory. They especially just need to get rid of to make room for new stuff, but also because they have too much of everything anyway. For example, Nomad Cosmetics is discounting the Whistler Snow Lodge only on Black Friday itself at 50% off. And that's a palette that is not newer. They've released multiple palettes this year. It would explain why you're seeing specific discounts on specifically older items, just because they need to get rid of their inventory. Things sit on a shelf, it's money out the window, and it's product that is slowly going bad. So the longer it sits on a shelf, the more discount you're going to see, because the companies need to get rid of it before it starts to need to be thrown away. So those are just a couple final thoughts on the idea of why holiday sales were starting so early. I think by the time this video goes up, it's going to be almost Thanksgiving, almost Black Friday. So this is just me musing a little bit more on a topic which I found interesting. I don't know that much about economics. I'm not well versed in socio and macroeconomics and how all of that plays together. But what I do know, I find quite interesting. I think it's fascinating to see what's happening around me culturally and societally, and look at even things like how our politics are affecting people's spending. It's fascinating. Anyway, those are the final thoughts on that particular topic. I would love to chat with you more in the comments if you have other insights or perspectives or just thoughts in general. And final thoughts on the Alice in Wonderland palette. This is, again, the second time I've used it. I would say that the mattes are very good. They remind me of ColourPop mattes in the way that they move around a lot on the eye. Let me contrast it with Udenzai. Udenzai mattes, you dip into the pan, you put it exactly where you want it on your eye, and it stays there. And the best you can do from there is blend out the edges. And personally, I rather prefer that formula because I find it's easier to differentiate between the colors that I'm laying down. Whereas with maybe ColourPop, the shadows are a little bit more movable. They spread around easier. They don't just stay in one spot. And so because they spread around easier, you get wonderful washes of color, and you can certainly build and blend, and you can, add in a darker shade to build up a color or to deepen or something. However, because they move around so much more easily, you have to be careful that you don't end up with shadows just combining into one muddy looking color. And I find that is the case with this Alice palette. The first time I used it, like I said, I dipped into the brown and it went everywhere. And I was impressed at the pigmentation and the blendability and how well it built and everything, but I was a little surprised that it just ended up all over the place. And then I had to kind of backpedal a little bit trying to control where the shadow was because I wasn't expecting it to spread out so much. Granted, I had been using Udenzai. I did an entire week of the Norns palette. I played with the Merry Christmas palette, so I was kind of in the Udenzai groove. But anyway, my thoughts on the shimmers are they are a bit more traditional, a little bit less exciting, definitely not the crazy high shine, high pigment, liquid looking metallic shine that you get from a lot of shimmers these days. These are a more standard traditional shimmer. They're nice. I won't say they're old fashioned. I won't say that they don't perform well. They're just not quite as impactful as a lot of the stuff that's on the market now. I was chatting with a friend of mine. I'm going to put her comment in the screen as well because she phrased it really nicely. I don't remember exactly what her phrasing was, but it's on my phone and my phone is recording. But what she basically said was the Sigma shimmers perform well on older skin, on aging eyelids, because they are not as putty or emollient. They're a little bit of a smoother overall finish. So if you have older skin, it's going to be a bit more flattering because it doesn't accentuate all the crags and crevices and fine lines that happens as you age. So my final thoughts on this palette, given my own personal eyeshadow preferences, would be that it has performed nicely. I do really like the color story. I'm glad I have it, but I'm not very interested in buying more Sigma palettes for the reason that the shimmers just aren't exciting to me. I really do like the color story, and I think it's going to be fun to pair the mattes with more exciting shimmers, like what I did today, grabbing the Glamlight palette to bring in that pop of green. It really transformed the look. Oh, one final thought. I think that the more I worked at a shimmer once it was laid on my lid, it started to become a little bit thin. Not necessarily patchy, just a bit thinner. So what I learned was, okay, dip into the shimmer, spray it, put it on the lid, and then leave it alone. And don't keep touching it up. You can touch up other brands, but this brand doesn't seem to want to be modified once it's laid down. So there you go. That's what I'm thinking about the Alice in Wonderland palette from Sigma. I think it's pretty. I think it's nice. I recommend it to you if you like the color story and you like the brand, you like the formula, and you don't mind the things that I was saying. It's totally based on preference. I don't really have any complaints. It's just a matter of how the formula works compared to other formulas, what I prefer, what I'm used to, etc. Thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for clicking on my channel. I hope you like what you saw. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the notification bell so that you don't miss new uploads because I am uploading a lot lately. And I hope that you guys have a great day. Until I see you next time. Bye!